So we're doing the maple glazed pulled pork tenderloin. This got my mouth watering just thinking about it when I was creating the recipe. So this can be done with anything. You can do this with chicken. You can do this, with turkey or anything like that. The pulled pork is traditionally made with a shoulder, with a fattier cut, with a richer cut, which slow cooked. It pulls perfectly. The tenderloin, it works just as well. Doesn't have equally the amount of fat. It's actually leaner than chicken.
Chicken breast, yeah.
Chicken breast, yeah. So it's a really nice lean meat to use, super tender. But if you cook it slow at a low heat, gentle heat, you'll get a really nice similar tenderness to it. So that's what we did today. And we're gonna start off so we have our pork tenderloin here. And what's nice about the pork tenderloin too is it's a cheaper cut of meat as well.
And I know for religious reasons, people may not eat pork, but if you're open to the idea that, like Jeremy said, it's lower fat than a chicken breast, it's a good option if you're getting into a routine of eating chicken every day, day in, day out.
You could beef it up too, right?
Yeah, you could use beef as well.
You could take some nice beef shank and,
For sure.
Cook it nice and slow.
Your meat of choice.
Definitely, yeah, definitely. This will work with anything. And like I said, the tenderloin is super lean. You have a little bit of the silver skin on the outside, so you can and this we removed most of it, but you can just take a knife and you just run it across the side, and you just do that to remove the rest. I mean, this isn't too bad. So you can do that with the rest of it. But actually, this is pretty good. It's not too bad at all. So we have our tenderloin, and what we're gonna do is we wanna add our glaze. We wanna add our marinade to it. So maple syrup, obviously. So I have some maple syrup in here, a little bit of Dijon mustard. You can add, whatever spices and herbs that you like at that point. We're gonna keep it fairly simple. So we're gonna stir that together. You can season it with a little salt and pepper. I've got a little bit of fresh thyme here. We're just gonna chop that fine. That's gonna go in. And this, we're gonna be doing in the oven. We're gonna be searing it and doing in the oven. If you have a slow cooker, this is a perfect slow cooker meal. It's gonna take a little bit longer, but I think that's the idea of a slow cooker, right?
Just leave it and don't worry about it.
So this we're doing in the oven 350 for about 2.5 to 3 hours. It's not too long, but if you were to do it in a slow cooker, I would leave it probably for about 6 to 8 hours. Depending on your setting, I wouldn't put it on high if you have a high and low setting.
Slow and low is always a good way to cook your meats.
So that's it. We're gonna put our marinade on. And just kind of rub it across. And now you can leave this to sit in the fridge overnight. That'll just enhance the flavor even more. I don't have the advantage of overnight right now, so we're just gonna do it right away.
Who wants to stay until tomorrow and see what happens?
So would puncturing it with a fork help?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I always say don't puncture it with a fork, because anytime, especially with marinades, when you puncture meat with a fork, you're allowing juice to escape after. There is a transfer period where some of the marinade goes in, but then it's also allowing it to escape. So I said no need to do that. I think just the time is your best bet. So the longer you leave it to marinate, the more flavor it's going to get. But because we're even slow cooking this, I mean, there's going to be no lack of flavor there for sure. So what we want to do is just before we throw it in the oven, get a nice quick sear. And this is more for color, to concentrate a little bit of the flavors. We want to get a nice not dark brown, but a nice golden brown around the outside, and then we're ready to throw it in.
Beauty. So a few nutrition points about maple syrup for everybody. So you might be aware that it's lower on the glycemic index than other types of sweeteners. So it's similar to honey, although honey can range quite a bit. So the glycemic index is a tool that's often used to help us get an idea of how a certain food that contains carbohydrate will affect our blood sugar over time. So it's usually compared to glucose, or just straight blood sugar, the type of sugar that's in our bloodstream, or white bread, which really elevates our blood sugar very quickly and then leads to a big drop. And the reason why we're concerned about this is because if your blood sugar drops too low and you get that rebound effect, then you start to feel tired, you start to lose concentration, and also it affects your insulin levels. So your poor little pancreas will release insulin to help all the sugar that's just gone into your bloodstream to be absorbed into the cells. And there's some evidence showing that all of these big fluctuations in insulin can really tire out your pancreas and increase your risk of developing diabetes down the road. So that's why we want to choose the lower glycemic index foods as much as possible. But everybody needs a little sweetness in their lives, and maple syrup has a glycemic index of 54. So that puts it on the low end of glycemic index. Right with fruits and vegetables, it's basically the same level as oatmeal. Now, the one thing to note about the glycemic index is it doesn't take into account portion size. So I'm not saying, a bowl of maple syrup is going to have the same effect on your blood sugar as a bowl of oatmeal, because glycemic index is standardized to basically the amount of carbohydrate that's within it. So it's easier to think about it in comparison to other types of sugar. So like your white sugar, for example, would be really high and cause that big blood sugar spike. Question?
What's the portion for the maple syrup?
What's a portion? A tablespoon, yes. And if you look on the bottle, it varies. We talk a lot in the Elixir Kitchen about reading your labels and looking at portion sizes. Mm-hmm. So the portion size on the label, for some of them, it will say a quarter cup, 3 tablespoons. So that's not necessarily saying that's the amount that you should have. Basically, a tablespoon is all you need, because it's sugar, but it's a healthier option. So it's a concentrated source of calories. If you're watching your weight, you want to make sure that you're controlling the amounts of added sugar that are in your diet. But in terms of sweeteners, it has lots of minerals and antioxidants that I'm going to talk about too.
So this is our baking dish here. What I'm doing is I'm just lining it with a few thick cuts of onion. You can even put some carrot in there, some celery, some fennel, whatever you want. I'm just going to make it very simple. And you can sear it a little bit more. I'm going to speed it up, but pretty much you want a nice color on the outside. And that's going to go right on to our onions. And then we want to add a little bit of liquid. So I have a little bit of stock here. You can add water. Any liquid will work. Just until I'm not covering the tenderloin, I'm just adding enough to cover the onions. And I'll also add a little bit of apple cider vinegar. The acid in there is just gonna enhance the flavor. It's gonna help to tenderize it even a little bit.
This is a great recipe for individuals that have difficulty chewing or difficulty swallowing, like a big steak or more attached meat. Mm-hmm. This is really gonna soften up when it comes out of the oven, so it's much easier to swallow.
And that's it. Wrap it with foil. That's how quick it is. And that's gonna go into the oven. So like I said, I have it at 350, and that's gonna take about 2.5 to 3 hours.
Set an alarm or something.
Yes,
Don't walk away and forget your poor little tenderloin in the oven.
Because it's so lean, it really doesn't take too much time at all. If you want it, it's gonna come out even more tender if you go even slower and even lower. So if you set it to 300, and then I would go a little bit higher, so about 5 hours, about 6 hours, and it'll really tender. So that's gonna go into the oven, and I'll show you. Actually, that's not gonna go yet.
Yes, so you would prepare it the exact same way. Yeah, put it in the slow cooker.
And just
would you put more liquid, or just the same? You'd probably want to.
Yeah, because it's going to be in
cover
there
it
a
more.
little bit longer.
Yeah,
it's
going to absorb the liquid more, I think.
But you're going to see a lot of liquid comes out of the onions and out of the meat as well. And just keep an eye on it. And so pretty much this is what you're looking at here.
Make sure you're around and staying home so that you can kind of check on it and add more stock or more liquid.
So you can see how much liquid is in there right now. And this is good. We're going to use a lot of this liquid. That's got a lot of flavor right now. So I'll show you quick. This tenderloin is super tender. And see how easy it shreds? Can you guys see that on there? Like super,
Pulls
super,
right
super,
apart.
super tender. but it's not ready. We're not ready to. It's you can eat it,
Come on.
but we want to do our barbecue sauce, which also has maple syrup, of course. Why not? And I mean, you can make this as simple as that's done. You use your favorite barbecue sauce. You know what I mean? It can be as easy as that. This is just a nice little extra step. And Ron was talking about the different colors before. You have the light and you have the amber. For cooking, you usually use the darker colors. Like Ron was saying, they're a little more robust in flavor, so you can pick them up in your food. The light ones are meant for, you know, your topping, your pancakes, and your favorite ingredients, but to eat meat and fresh. And then use the darker ones for color. So with we have just a small pot here. We're gonna add a little bit of, you can add olive oil or grapeseed oil. You don't need too much, a couple teaspoons. And everyone, you know, I'm sure everyone has their favorite barbecue sauce recipe.
I don't, so I'm going to use yours.
We got a little bit of onion and garlic. I'm actually going to just move this off because it is hot and I'm going to burn myself. All right, so we have a clove of garlic. Just using the back of the knife, very simple. And because we're going to blend this after, I don't care that it's super fine. So that's going to go in there. We're going to add a touch of salt at this point. It's not so much for seasoning, but the salt is going to start pulling some of that moisture out of the onion, out of the garlic, and it's going to allow it to soften and cook a little bit easier. So about 2 minutes, just until it's soft. Let's imagine it's soft at this point. And we're going to add the rest of our ingredients. So I have a little bit more apple cider vinegar. The juice from
Careful.
use
Use oven mitts.
It's not super hot, but the juice from the slow cooked pulled pork, that's going to go in, and about half a cup is good. I mean, whatever you have in there. If there's very little left, then just top it up with a little bit of water, a little bit more stock, and that's fine. So that's going to go in there. We're going to add a little bit of tomato paste. I know some people like adding ketchup at that point. You can do that too. This is just a little more concentrated tomato flavor, and it doesn't have anything else in it.
You're not getting some of those other sugars and corn syrups that you find in most tomato ketchup.
The Worcestershire, that's my attempt. There we go. I like my version better.
Our British friends help us with that one.
A little bit of, and this is optional, this is just a little bit of chipotle chili powder. You can add any heat level. If you like it very mild, don't add it at that point. Because we're adding maple syrup, it's nice, if you do like a little bit spicy, it's nice to have a little bit of the sweet and a little bit of the spicy. So that's completely optional and up to you how much you want to add. And then we're going to add our maple syrup, about 2 tablespoons. The darker kind, again, because it has such a robust flavor, you will taste it. It will come out. And that's pretty much it. We're going to let that cook down. You're going to bring it to a boil, reduce it to a little bit of lower heat, and allow that to cook down just until it's about half. So it's about 10-15 minutes. It doesn't really take too long. And then you can blend it up so that you get all the onions and everything. So once it cooks down a bit, you can see how dark it comes out. You want to see that? Kind of.
There you go. Nice rich color.
And I'm going to blend this up. Actually, do you mind, Chris, to start shredding this?
Sure.
And we can finish her up. So if you got to transfer to a blender, these things are amazing. Yeah, I suggest it's for soups. It saves you the hassle of dragging an entire pot and try to pour it into your blender with skill and not boil or burn yourself. These things, they go right into your pot, very easy.
So one thing about buying your maple syrup, you want to make sure that you're paying for the real thing and that you're getting the real thing. a lot of them will be blends. So if it doesn't say pure maple syrup on it, definitely check the ingredients for what else has been added, because it's typically something cheaper like corn syrup. And some of those commercial type of syrups that you can find in the grocery store, they can contain as low as 3% actual maple syrup. So a lot of people ask me questions about, well, you know, I've seen blends of maple and agave, or I've seen maple syrup blended with, you know, artificial sweeteners so that it doesn't affect your blood sugar as much. Or shouldn't I choose those? Aren't those ones healthier? And my answer to that is, I think it's already a low glycemic index food, like I said before. If you're using it in small amounts and you don't have diabetes, you don't have to worry about it. Even if you do have diabetes, you know, a tablespoon being added to your meals or being used as an ingredient in a recipe is not going to affect your blood sugar by very much. So I believe in going for the real thing, and with those artificial sweeteners, we really don't know about the long-term health risks of them. And plus, you're not getting all of the lovely nutrients that you would with your maple syrup.
And so that's after we blend it. It has this beautiful amber color, and it's thick, but it's not super thick because I want it to be able to cover and coat all of the pulled pork. And then if I had to do this ahead of time in the fridge and then warm up the entire dish the next day, it's not going to dry out because it still has a nice moisture level. If you want it a little bit thicker, you just throw it back on the heat and just reduce a little bit more. It doesn't take too much time. So that looks good. I'm going to take a little bit of that out.
Yeah. How much do you need?
Yeah, just put a. That's a good portion there. Yeah. And that's it. Then we put our barbecue sauce over top. And I mean, it's a nice alternative to, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love my pulled pork, but it's a leaner, it's a little bit lighter, but you're still getting that
maximizing
flavor.
taste.
Yeah, you're maximizing taste, you're getting flavor.
Has to taste good.
That's it. And so that's it. That's ready to go. You can serve that, or you can, like I said, you can wrap it up, put it in the fridge, and then you can warm it the next day, so you can do it ahead of time. And now we're going to do a quick slaw to go with it. And this is one of my favorite slaws, is apple and cabbage. Two ingredients that go very, very well with pork. And they make a beautiful slaw. So green apple, you can use any apple, and you can make it as fine, and, you know, take your time, slice it. Even a mandolin is beautiful. Get some thin slices, cross-cut them, matchsticks, get as chefy as you want. Or you take out the cheese grater.
That's what I would do.
It is super simple. You can fly through, and it gives you, it's a little fine, obviously, but it gives you still a really nice slaw texture. So I'd say go through about a couple apples. I'm going to make a small portion here, and then cabbage too. Thing with cabbage is you can never find anything smaller than a bowling ball. So, try to use it in as many different recipes as possible, or you just make a big batch of slaw and don't dress it, and you treat it as a salad. You have it in a Ziploc bag, and then you can use it wherever you want. And so pretty much the same thing. Actually, Christy, why don't you finish that? I don't want purple fingers.
Oh, so unfair. That's what I get for being the chef's assistant.
And we're gonna add a little bit. You want to get that creaminess, but I don't like it super creamy. So this is just actually a little bit of Greek yogurt. It's got a nice thickness to it, and you're still gonna get that creaminess without adding a lot of that heavy, rich mayonnaise.
Your restaurant coleslaw does not count as vegetable.
Yeah.
Because of all the fat that you're getting along with it. So definitely this healthier version helps you to reduce the saturated fat that you'd be getting from all of that mayo.
Just a little bit of lemon juice in there. There's just maybe a teaspoon or so of olive oil. You know what? Let me get that bowl back.
More?
Yeah, just a little bit more. And that's going to go in. You dress that.
Woo.
And you can serve it in a whole wheat bun. these are actually a great idea. It was a suggestion from one of my George Brown students, and
Have you guys seen these in the grocery store? These mini pitas?
yeah, really good. And for me, I don't like too much bread when I'm eating a sandwich, something like that. So these are perfect. You know, very thin, very small.
And it's nice for people with smaller appetites. You know, you can have a couple of these as a snack,
Exactly.
or rather than having a huge amount, you know, a giant pulled pork sandwich, you can just do a couple of them and mix it up.
For kids.
There you go.
Kids, exactly. It's more
Yeah,
fun.
perfect little snack. And I mean, it you know,
Appetizer.
very simple to put together.